The afternoon sun touched the streets of the small town, turning the windows of the workshop into golden mirrors. Inside the building, the air smelled of grease, oil, and metal. It was a place where engines usually came back to life, where cars left with a shine and a roar. But that day, the shop carried a heavy silence. Parked right in the middle of the garage was a beauty from another age. A 1940 Rolls-Royce painted in deep black with silver trim that gleamed even under the dust. It was more than just a car. It was a piece of history, a symbol of power, money, and style, and it was broken. The owner of the car, a wealthy collector named Mr. Harrison, stood with his arms folded tightly across his chest. He was a tall man with silver hair and sharp eyes. Normally, he wore a calm smile when showing off his collection at events, but now his face carried lines of worry. The car had stopped working months ago. He had tried to get it fixed in different places, but no one could figure out what was wrong. Now he had brought it to the biggest workshop in the area, where top mechanics gathered. Several experts circled the car, peeking under the hood, running their hands across the chrome, and whispering in low voices. They wore uniforms with shiny tools strapped to their belts, but even their confidence was beginning to fade. They had tried adjusting the spark plugs, testing the battery, and checking the fuel system. Yet every attempt ended in the same sound, the car groaning, coughing, and falling silent. The famous Rolls-Royce refused to start, and with each failure, the atmosphere grew heavier. In the corner, sweeping the floor with a wide broom, was the janitor, Mr. Carter. He was a man in his 50s, quiet and humble, who had worked at the workshop for years. He wasn't part of the team of experts. His job was to keep the place clean, empty trash bins, and wipe down the oily floors. Most of the time, people hardly noticed him. That day, he kept his head down, pushing the broom, though he couldn't help but glance at the circle forming around the classic car. By the entrance sat his daughter, Lily. She was only 15, a slim girl with long brown hair tied back into a ponytail. Every day after school, she came to wait for her father so they could walk home together. While she waited, she often did her homework or flipped through the old car magazines left on the waiting bench. She loved machines, loved how things worked, and her father sometimes teased her, saying she was more curious than half the mechanics who worked there. Lily's eyes sparkled as she watched the experts gather around the Rolls-Royce. She had read about that exact model in one of the magazines, a car built with careful hands, known for its smooth ride and unmatched luxury. Seeing it in real life made her heart race. She leaned forward, trying to listen to the voices of the men around the hood. "Fuel pump looks fine," one said. "It has to be the ignition," another argued. No, it's deeper than that. "Something's out of rhythm," a third replied, shaking his head. The words floated across the room, mixing with the sound of tools clanking and wrenches dropping onto the metal tray. Mr. Harrison's patience was running thin. He pulled out a pocket watch, glanced at it, and sighed loudly. "I thought you were the best," he said sharply. "Do I need to send this car overseas, London? Or maybe all the way to Germany?" The mechanics stiffened at his words. They didn't like being doubted, but even they could feel the truth of it. None of them had found the answer yet. The janitor kept sweeping, though he caught his daughter's wide-eyed look. She had that familiar spark in her eyes, the one she got when she spotted a puzzle. He gave her a small shake of his head, silently telling her to stay quiet. This was not their world. This was a world of polished shoes, expensive watches, and experts with years of training. Still, Lily couldn't look away from the Rolls-Royce. Something about it called to her, the way an unsolved riddle calls to a curious mind. She thought of the evenings at home, when her father let her help repair their old lawnmower or fix the toaster that kept breaking. She remembered how she loved unscrewing the back of radios, tracing wires with her finger, and asking questions until her father laughed and told her she had the heart of a mechanic. But this was different. This was no small toaster. This was a Rolls-Royce, one of the finest cars ever made. And right now, some of the smartest experts couldn't bring it back to life. As the hours passed, tension grew. The experts wiped sweat from their foreheads, their pride slowly crumbling. One after another, they admitted defeat, stepping back from the car and muttering excuses. Mr. Harrison's face turned red with frustration. He looked like a man who had lost not just a car, but a piece of his identity. Lily glanced at her father again. He was still sweeping, though slower now, as if even he felt sorry for the broken car. She wanted to ask him about it, wanted to whisper her thoughts, but she held back. What if the men laughed at her? What if she embarrassed her father in front of everyone? And yet the thought wouldn't leave her. She noticed something small, something the men hadn't even mentioned. The way one wire sat loose, almost invisible beneath the shiny hood. The way the rhythm of the engine cough didn't match what she had read in her magazines. She chewed her lip, her hands curling into fists on her lap. Meanwhile, Mr. Harrison's voice rose again. I've wasted enough time here. If none of you can fix it, I'll find someone who can. I don't care if it costs me a fortune. This car will run again, even if I have to drag it across the ocean. The words rang through the workshop like a challenge. The experts looked down at the floor, defeated. The janitor leaned on his broom, silent, and Lily sat on the bench, her heart pounding in her chest. She was only a 15-year-old girl, the daughter of a janitor, but she knew what she had seen that evening. As the sun dipped lower and the shadows stretched across the workshop floor, hope seemed to fade from the room. The great Rolls-Royce stood still, like a king brought low, its silence heavier than any broken sound. The men began to pack their tools, shaking their heads. Mr. Harrison rubbed his temples, already planning the expensive trip overseas. And in the middle of it all, unnoticed by most, Lily's eyes never left the car. She whispered under her breath, almost like a promise to herself, I know what's wrong with you. The next morning, the workshop opened early, but the mood was far from cheerful. The Rolls-Royce still sat in the middle, looking proud yet helpless. It almost seemed to mock the men who had failed it the day before. The mechanics came back with tired faces, still determined to try again. They brought in more tools, new testers, and even some old manuals they had dug up from their homes. But deep inside, most of them already carried doubt. Mr. Harrison arrived soon after, wearing his dark suit and polished shoes. His sharp eyes scanned the car as if checking whether it had come alive overnight. When he saw it was still silent, his frown deepened. He carried a reputation as a collector who never accepted defeat. This car had been his crown jewel, the one he proudly displayed at every classic car exhibition. Now it had become a stubborn riddle he couldn't solve. The experts got to work quickly. One man bent over the carburetor, another inspected the ignition again, and a third tested the flow of fuel. Tools clanged, the smell of gasoline filled the air, and voices rose with suggestions. Try tightening it again. Check the valves once more. Maybe it's the pistons. But every attempt ended in the same failure. The key turned, the engine coughed, and then silence followed. The more they tried, the heavier the silence grew. Lily was there again, sitting on the same bench near the entrance. She had brought her school books, but her eyes stayed fixed on the Rolls-Royce. She could feel the tension in the room. Even though no one paid attention to her, she knew she wasn't supposed to speak. She was only the janitor's daughter, just a girl who should sit quietly until her father finished his work. Still, her mind kept racing with ideas. She watched every move the experts made. She noticed how they kept focusing on the bigger parts of the engine, ignoring the smaller details. To them, the problem had to be something major. But Lily wasn't so sure. She had seen enough machines with her father to know that sometimes it was the smallest piece that caused the biggest trouble. Her father, Mr. Carter, was mopping near the back of the room. He glanced at her now and then, making sure she behaved. But he could also see the way her eyes followed the experts, her pencil tapping nervously against her notebook. He knew that look well. It was the look she always had before asking him endless questions about how things worked. The morning turned into afternoon. Sweat shined on the foreheads of the mechanics. Mr. Harrison grew restless, pacing across the workshop floor. His shoes clicked sharply against the tiles. This is wasting my time, he muttered more than once. All of you claim to be the best, and yet this car sits like a useless statue. The men didn't reply. Their pride was already wounded. They had tried every method they knew, but the Rolls-Royce refused to bend to their skills. Lily bit her lip. Her eyes caught the same loose wire again, the one hidden almost under the hood, nearly invisible unless you looked closely. She also remembered the strange rhythm of the engine's cough. It reminded her of a small radio she and her father had fixed once. The radio wouldn't play until she had noticed one tiny connection out of place. She wanted to speak, wanted to tell them what she saw. But fear held her back. What if they laughed at her? What if they told her to keep quiet? She imagined the red faces of the experts, angry that a schoolgirl dared to suggest anything. And worse, what if Mr. Harrison thought she was mocking him? Her father must have read her mind. He walked over and whispered, "Not now, Lily. These men don't want advice from us. We clean here. We don't fix cars like that. But Dad, she whispered back, I think I see what's wrong. He gave her a tired smile. I know, sweetheart. But sometimes knowing isn't enough. People don't always listen, even if you're right. She sank back into her seat, her heart still racing. The experts tried again, this time with new equipment. Sparks flew as they tested the plugs and smoke rose from the engine. For a moment, hope filled the air. But the car sputtered, coughed, and died once more. The disappointment was almost too heavy to bear. Mr. Harrison finally snapped. Enough, he shouted. You've had 2 full days and the car is worse than when I brought it. This is shameful. The room went silent. The men put down their tools, none of them daring to meet his eyes. Lily felt a strange courage rising inside her. She couldn't explain why, but she couldn't stay silent any longer. She stood up slowly, her hands trembling. Excuse me, she said softly. At first no one noticed. Her voice was too small against the silence. But when she spoke again, louder this time, all eyes turned toward her. The experts frowned. Mr. Harrison looked confused. Even her father froze, the mop still in his hand. What is it, girl? Mr. Harrison asked sharply. Lily swallowed hard. I've been watching. I think the problem might not be what you're looking at. Maybe it's something smaller. One of the mechanics laughed under his breath. What does she know? She's just a kid. Her cheeks turned red, but she held her ground. Sometimes small things stop big machines. My father showed me that. Mr. Harrison raised an eyebrow. He was desperate, but also doubtful. And what do you suggest, young lady? Her father quickly stepped forward. Sir, forgive her. She's just curious. She doesn't mean any harm. But Harrison's sharp eyes stayed on Lily. Something about her courage, about the way she spoke with certainty, caught his attention. He wasn't sure whether to dismiss her or give her a chance. The experts exchanged annoyed looks, but no one spoke. Lily took a deep breath. Let me look at it just once. If I'm wrong, I'll never speak again. The room filled with heavy silence. Her father's face went pale. He wanted to stop her, but words failed him. The mechanics shook their heads, some even smirking, and yet Mr. Harrison slowly nodded. Fine, let her try. None of you seem to have the answer, so why not? The men gasped. One of them protested, Sir, this is ridiculous. You can't let a child— Silence, Harrison cut him off. His voice carried authority that left no room for argument. I said let her try. Lily's heart pounded so loudly she thought everyone could hear it. She stepped closer to the Rolls-Royce, the shine of its hood reflecting her nervous face. For the first time she was standing not as a bystander, but as someone about to touch the legend itself. Her father placed a trembling hand on her shoulder. Be careful, Lily, this isn't like fixing a toaster. She gave him a small smile. I know, Dad, but I think I can do it. The workshop held its breath as the janitor's 15-year-old daughter leaned over the engine, her curious eyes sharper than all the tools in the room. The next day started with the same nervous energy as the one before. The sun had only just risen when the first mechanic unlocked the doors of the workshop. The smell of oil and metal still hung heavy in the air, and right in the center of the room sat the Rolls-Royce unmoved, silent, and stubborn. Its polished silver trim caught the morning light, but instead of showing beauty, it looked almost like a cruel reminder of failure. By 8 o'clock, the workshop was buzzing again. The experts had returned with fresh ideas and renewed determination. They brought new sets of tools, heavier manuals, and thick notebooks full of diagrams. They spoke loudly, as though volume might push back their doubts. Yet beneath their confident words there was unease. Yesterday the car had defeated them. Today it might do the same. Mr. Harrison arrived soon after. His suit was as crisp as always, his shoes polished to perfection, but the lines on his forehead were deeper. He walked toward the Rolls-Royce as if expecting it to suddenly spring to life. When it didn't, his frown tightened. To him, this car wasn't just metal. It was pride. A man like him who spent fortunes collecting rare vehicles couldn't accept that a machine he owned was beyond repair. The mechanics went to work. One inspected the fuel system again, another pulled apart the ignition wires, and a third bent over the spark plugs. The sound of metal tools echoed through the workshop. Sparks flashed as testers touched wires. Gasoline fumes grew stronger as parts were taken apart and replaced, but every attempt ended the same way. The key turned. The engine coughed once, and then nothing. The silence afterward was almost painful. Near the doorway, Lily sat on the same wooden bench she had claimed yesterday. Her school bag rested by her feet, but her book stayed closed. She couldn't look away from the car. Her young face was filled with concentration, her eyes following every move the men made. She might have only been 15, but her mind worked like a puzzle solver's. She remembered every article she had read in the worn car magazine she collected. She remembered every moment watching her father fix broken machines at home. She noticed the way the men kept focusing on the big pieces, the carburetor, the pistons, the plugs. To them, the fault had to be large and important. But Lily had learned something different from her father. Machines often failed because of the smallest, simplest details. Mr. Carter, the janitor, mopped the far corner of the room. Every so often he glanced at his daughter. He saw how her pencil tapped nervously against her notebook. He knew that look too well. It was the same look she had every time she tried to figure out why the toaster didn't pop, why the lawnmower wouldn't start, or why the old radio in their kitchen buzzed with static. She was restless with curiosity. By noon, frustration was everywhere. The mechanics wiped sweat from their foreheads. Their voices grew sharper. Check the valves again. No, it has to be electrical. You're wasting time on the wrong part. Their arguments filled the workshop. Mr. Harrison's patience snapped. He paced back and forth, his footsteps loud against the tiles. "You call yourselves experts," he said in a cold, cutting voice. "Yet this car sits here dead. Do you expect me to believe not one of you can solve this?" The men stayed silent. None of them wanted to admit defeat, but their silence was louder than words. Lily's eyes stayed on the car. She saw again what had caught her attention yesterday, a small wire out of place, almost hidden beneath the hood. She also thought about the strange rhythm of the engine's cough, the way it reminded her of a broken radio she had once fixed with her father. Her heart pounded. She wanted to say something, but fear held her back. She imagined the laughter of the mechanics. She imagined their angry faces if a young girl dared to correct them. She imagined Mr. Harrison dismissing her with a wave of his hand. Her father noticed her expression and quietly walked over. "Not now, Lily," he whispered. "These men don't want to hear from us. We clean. We don't fix Rolls-Royces." "But Dad," she whispered back, her voice trembling with urgency, "I think I see the problem. It's not the big parts. It's something smaller." He gave her a sad smile. "Sweetheart, even if you're right, they won't listen. People don't always hear the truth when it comes from someone they don't expect." Lily sank back against the bench, frustrated, but the thought wouldn't leave her. She kept staring at the car, chewing her lip. Her hands curled into fists on her lap. She knew what she had seen. She couldn't just forget it. By late afternoon, the experts were exhausted. Their tools clattered onto trays, their uniforms stained with grease. The Rolls-Royce hadn't moved an inch. "Enough!" Mr. Harrison's voice thundered through the workshop. "2 full days and none of you have managed anything. This is shameful. I've wasted my time and my money." The silence that followed was thick and heavy. The mechanics lowered their eyes, and then, almost without thinking, Lily's voice broke through. "Excuse me," she said softly. No one heard. She swallowed hard and tried again, louder this time. "Excuse me?" Every head turned toward her. The experts frowned, confused. Mr. Harrison looked startled. Even her father froze, the mop still in his hand. "What is it, girl?" Mr. Harrison asked sharply. Her knees trembled, but she stood up. "I've been watching. I think maybe the problem isn't what you're looking at. Maybe it's something smaller." One of the mechanics chuckled. "What does she know? She's just a kid." Her face flushed red, but she didn't back down. "Sometimes small things stop big machines. My father taught me that." Mr. Harrison narrowed his eyes. He was irritated, but also curious. "And what exactly do you suggest?" Her father quickly stepped forward. "Sir, forgive her. She's only curious. She means no harm." But Harrison didn't take his eyes off Lily. Something about her confidence, something about the way she spoke without hesitation, caught him. He was a man who had dealt with hundreds of people, and he could tell when someone was bluffing. This girl didn't look like she was bluffing. The mechanics exchanged annoyed glances, but no one dared to speak. Lily's voice was steady now. "Let me look at it just once. If I'm wrong, I'll never say a word again." The room fell silent. Her father's face turned pale. He wanted to stop her, but words caught in his throat. "This is ridiculous," one of the men muttered. "Sir, you can't let a child—" "Quiet!" Mr. Harrison snapped. His voice cut through the air. "None of you have fixed it. If she thinks she can, let her try. I've got nothing to lose." Gasps moved through the room. The mechanics shook their heads in disbelief. Lily's heart hammered inside her chest. She took a slow step forward. The Rolls-Royce loomed larger than ever, its silver hood reflecting her nervous face. Her father placed a trembling hand on her shoulder. "Lily," he whispered, "this isn't like fixing a radio." "This car is priceless," she gave him a small smile. "I know, Dad, but I think I can do it." The workshop went silent as the janitor's 15-year-old daughter reached the car, standing not as an onlooker, but as someone ready to touch the legend itself. Every pair of eyes followed her. The experts folded their arms, waiting to see her fail. Mr. Harrison stood still, his expression unreadable, and Lily leaned forward, her eyes sharper than any tool in the room. The room was still, the kind of stillness that came before something important. Everyone's eyes were on Lily as she stood before the Rolls-Royce. The experts had their arms crossed, waiting with doubt painted across their faces. Some smirked, already imagining the failure. Mr. Harrison stood a few steps behind, his sharp eyes following every move she made. Her father stood closest, almost torn between pride and fear, his hand twitching as if he wanted to pull her back before she embarrassed herself. But Lily felt none of that now. For the first time since she had entered the workshop, she felt sure of what she had seen. She remembered every magazine article, every diagram she had studied, every late night sitting at the kitchen table watching her father repair small appliances. Machines spoke a language, and though she was only 15, she had been listening for years. She leaned over the engine carefully, her ponytail swinging forward. The smell of oil and grease filled her nose, but she didn't flinch. Her fingers brushed gently over the wires, tracing them like paths on a map. She noticed again the small detail that had been ignored, the wire slightly loose, almost hidden by other parts. She pressed it lightly, and it shifted more than it should have. Her heart leapt. She knew it. "Don't touch too much," one of the mechanics warned sharply, his voice dripping with impatience. "You'll make it worse." Lily didn't even look up. "I know what I'm doing." Her voice was calm, though her heart raced inside her chest. Her father stepped closer, whispering so only she could hear. "Are you sure, Lily? This isn't the toaster at home. This is a car worth more than our house." She gave him a small smile. "I know, Dad, just trust me." She adjusted the wire carefully, her small fingers nimble in the tight space. Then she checked another part nearby, the connection that fed into the ignition. She frowned, noticing the metal didn't sit flush. It was like a puzzle piece put in the wrong way. No wonder the car couldn't breathe. "Look at her. Pretending she knows," one of the experts muttered under his breath, but his words sounded more defensive than confident. Finally, Lily looked up at Mr. Harrison. "Could someone hand me a wrench?" A small one. The room froze again. The request was simple, but no one moved. The mechanics glanced at each other, waiting for someone else to act. "I said hand her one," Mr. Harrison ordered firmly, breaking the silence. His voice carried no room for refusal. Reluctantly, one of the men passed her the tool. She thanked him softly and bent down again. With quick but careful movements, she tightened the connection, adjusted the alignment, and secured the wire into place. Her hands were steady, even as her stomach flipped with nerves. When she was done, she wiped the sweat from her forehead and stepped back. "Try it now," she said, her voice steady. The mechanics exchanged doubtful looks, but Harrison was already moving. He slid into the driver's seat, his polished shoes pressing the pedals. He turned the key. For a second, the workshop held its breath. Then the Rolls-Royce coughed once, louder than before, and then roared to life. The engine purred with a deep, smooth sound like music filling the air. The ground seemed to hum under their feet. Dust shook loose from the rafters as the power of the machine filled the room. The silence that followed broke into gasps. The mechanics stared, wide-eyed and pale. Some stepped closer in disbelief, their mouths open. Her father dropped his mop with a clatter, his hands trembling. His daughter had done what seasoned experts could not. And Mr. Harrison? Mr. Harrison sat frozen behind the wheel, his eyes wide, his chest rising and falling quickly. He revved the engine once, and the Rolls-Royce responded instantly, smooth as silk. He shut it off and climbed out slowly, his gaze locked on Lily. The wealthy collector, who had never bent to anyone, now looked at a 15-year-old girl as if she had rewritten the rules of the world. How did you do that?" he asked, his voice softer than anyone had ever heard it. Lily swallowed hard but lifted her chin. "It wasn't anything big, just a loose connection. Small things can stop big machines. Her words echoed in the workshop, simple yet powerful. The experts shifted uncomfortably. One of them muttered something about luck, but even he didn't sound convinced. Their pride had been struck down by the quiet brilliance of a girl they had dismissed. Mr. Carter stepped forward, his voice trembling. "Sir, she's always been curious. I didn't know she—" But Harrison raised a hand to stop him. "No, don't you dare apologize. What your daughter just did is nothing short of remarkable." He turned to Lily, his eyes sharp again but filled with respect this time. "Do you understand what you've accomplished? You fixed a machine that men twice, 3 times your age couldn't solve." Lily blushed, her fingers tightening around the wrench. She wanted to say more, but words stuck in her throat. Her father's eyes filled with tears he quickly wiped away. He had always known his daughter was special, but seeing her prove it in front of everyone felt like a dream. Mr. Harrison walked around the car slowly, running his hand along the smooth paint as if touching something holy. Then he stopped in front of Lily. "You have a gift," he said simply, "and gifts like that deserve to be nurtured." The mechanics remained quiet, some still staring at the purring car, others stealing glances at the girl who had outdone them. Lily lowered the wrench and smiled nervously. I just love machines. I like to see how things work. And you'll see much more than this," Harrison promised, his voice steady with conviction. "This talent of yours won't be wasted." For the first time, Lily realized what she had done. The fear, the nerves all melted away, replaced by a sense of pride she had never felt before. The car wasn't just fixed. It had given her a chance to prove herself. Her father stepped closer and pulled her into his arms. "You did it, sweetheart," he whispered. "You really did it." The workshop buzzed with whispers now, the kind that spread fast. Everyone knew the story would travel. A janitor's 15-year-old daughter had brought back to life a 1940 Rolls-Royce when the best experts failed. Outside, the evening sun dipped lower, painting the streets in warm light. Inside, the car gleamed as though it knew it had been given a second chance. And standing beside it was the girl who had made it happen. Her life forever changed in that single, extraordinary moment. The sound of the Rolls-Royce's engine still echoed in everyone's ears long after it was turned off. People stood around as if they had just seen a miracle. The experts, who had come in with pride and confidence, now looked small and shaken. None of their years of training had saved them from defeat. Instead, it had been a 15-year-old girl, the janitor's daughter, who had solved the mystery. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Mr. Harrison stepped forward again. His sharp eyes rested on Lily, studying her with curiosity and something close to admiration. He had met inventors, engineers, and designers from across the world, but never had he seen someone so young with such natural skill. "You have done something extraordinary," he said finally, his voice strong and clear, "and the world deserves to know it." Lily's cheeks turned red. She looked down at the wrench still in her hand, as if it were the key to a secret she had only just unlocked. Her father placed his arm gently around her shoulders, still overwhelmed by what had just happened. The mechanics, ashamed but also unwilling to argue, began packing their tools. A few avoided her eyes completely, but others glanced at her with a mixture of disbelief and respect. They knew they had witnessed something rare, something they could not deny. Mr. Harrison called his driver, who rushed in from outside. "Tell the papers," he said firmly. "Tell them the car has been fixed. Tell them who fixed it." The driver nodded quickly and disappeared, leaving whispers in his trail. Lily turned to her father, panic in her eyes. "The papers? I don't want people making fun of me. What if they don't believe it?" Her father smiled gently, brushing her hair back. "They will believe it. You showed everyone with your own hands. No one can take that away from you." Mr. Harrison overheard and stepped closer. "Listen, young lady. Talent like yours should never be hidden. Do you know what I see when I look at you? I see the future. I see someone who could change machines, maybe even the world." Lily blinked up at him, not knowing what to say. She had only followed her curiosity. She had only wanted to help. But now it seemed as if that small act had opened a door much bigger than she ever imagined. Later that evening, as she and her father walked home, the town already buzzed with the news. Word traveled faster than cars. Shopkeepers whispered about it. Neighbors leaned out of their windows, and even children shouted about the janitor's daughter who fixed the Rolls-Royce. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Others smiled with pride, saying the town would be remembered for this day. At home, Lily sat at the kitchen table, still stunned. Her father brewed tea, his hands moving slowly, almost clumsily, because his thoughts were far away. "You know what this means, Lily?" he asked softly. She shook her head. "It means people will look at you differently now. They'll see you not just as my daughter, but as someone with a gift. But I don't want them to think I'm special," she whispered. I just like fixing things," he chuckled. "Sometimes that's exactly what makes someone special." The next few days proved him right. The local newspaper printed the story with a bold headline: "Experts failed. Teen girl fixed collector's Rolls-Royce." A photograph of Lily standing shyly beside the car filled the front page. Letters poured in, some from nearby towns, others from faraway places. Schools wrote, inviting her to visit. A local university sent a professor to meet her. Mr. Harrison himself visited their modest home, sitting awkwardly at their small wooden table. He told Mr. Carter that he wanted to sponsor Lily's education. "Money will never be an obstacle for her," he declared. "If she wishes to study engineering, design, or anything mechanical, I will make sure she gets the best training the world can offer." Mr. Carter was speechless. Tears filled his eyes as he gripped his daughter's hand. For years he had worried about giving her the life she deserved. Now one moment of courage had changed everything. Lily, however, was still the same girl. She continued to sit on the bench after school, waiting for her father to finish work. She still flipped through greasy magazines, still asked endless questions about how things worked. But now, when she walked into the workshop, the mechanics greeted her differently. No longer did they see her as just the janitor's kid. They nodded respectfully, some even asking her opinion on tricky repairs. One afternoon, she stood quietly near a car with its hood open. A mechanic scratched his head, muttering about a strange noise in the engine. Lily tilted her head, listened for a moment, and then suggested a small adjustment. The man tried it and gasped when the problem disappeared. He looked at her as though he had just seen a magician. Her father watched from the corner, his heart swelling with pride. He no longer feared people laughing at her. Instead, he knew they would one day cheer for her. Weeks later, the Rolls-Royce was displayed again at a grand exhibition. Crowds gathered around, admiring the shine, the smooth lines, and the powerful engine. Mr. Harrison stood proudly beside it, telling anyone who would listen how the car had been revived. And each time he pointed to Lily, who stood nervously at the edge of the crowd. "This girl," he would say loudly, "this 15-year-old girl fixed what none of us could. Remember her name." At first, Lily blushed and tried to hide behind her father. But slowly she began to lift her chin higher. She realized it wasn't about fame. It was about showing others what was possible. If she, a janitor's daughter with no training, could solve a mystery that defeated experts, then maybe other young people could believe in their own hidden strengths too. Her life was no longer the same. Opportunities opened. Doors that once seemed locked tight now swung wide. Teachers gave her special attention, guiding her toward books on science and engineering. Neighbors brought her broken radios, clocks, and old machines, asking for her help. She never charged them, only smiled and fixed what she could. Each success gave her more confidence. Each mistake taught her more than any classroom ever could. Years later, when people spoke of her, they didn't just talk about the day she fixed the Rolls-Royce. They talked about the way she believed in herself when no one else did, the way she trusted her eyes and her mind even when others laughed. And for Lily, that was the greatest gift of all. Not the newspaper headlines, not the scholarships, not even the proud glances from her father. The real gift was knowing that courage comes in small moments, and sometimes the smallest hands can solve the biggest problems. The old Rolls-Royce continued to run smoothly for years after, its engine humming like a loyal friend. And every time it roared to life, it carried with it the memory of a 15-year-old girl who once dared to stand up in a room full of doubters and prove them wrong.